Hi, Lauren. Welcome to Better Tech. It's a pleasure to have you as one of the top 25 sales coaches and women in sales on our show. So, can you briefly introduce yourself for our audience?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Lauren Bailey. My friends call me LB. 12 years ago, I founded the company Factor 8, and 2 years ago, a new company called Girls Club. I grew up in tech and I was in sales leadership, and then pinged back and forth between starting and running training and development departments. And eventually found that that was my secret sauce, that translation between those two areas and helping alter behaviors to hit sales goals. And that's when I jumped out to start doing it for myself.
Cool. So, how exactly did you get the idea to start Factory? Was it always like this dream of yours to found your own company?
It was, but I didn't know it would be Factor 8. So even at a young age, I knew I wanted to own my own business. I wanted to travel the world. I wanted to make great money, and I wanted to have a team of people that loved coming to work every day. And the how and the what and the where and with whom, all of that was ancillary. But that was the dream. When I first
Yeah.
popped out of corporate America, my last corporate job was in charge of training strategy for the global telesales effort for SAP. And it was a tremendous opportunity, but I knew it was time to start my own gig. I spent a year without a company name. I call it my dating period, Amna. I was dating different ideas. I was doing favors for friends. I was subcontracting for other companies. And what I
Mhm.
was really looking for was my secret sauce, my value add that would be worth its own company and shingle, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And how has that transition been? Like working a full-time corporate job to really getting into the entrepreneurship side of it. How has
That's the big jump. Sorry to interrupt, but that's it right there. That's the crux of it. That one decision to go for it. And I love talking to people when they're in that space because it's scary. It's really scary. Now, once you cross over, once you jump into this end of the pool, if you will,
Mhm.
the water's great. There are so many reasons to come here, but the decision to actually to join the side of the pool or go off the high dive or however you want to put that, it's a tough one to do. And there's probably right times and right ways and wrong ways that are individual for each of us.
So in your case, then you would say that it's true, the grass is greener on the other side.
The grass is greener, the water is warmer. We could do it a bunch of different ways, but yes, there have been many periods in the last 12, 13 years where I've really thanked my former self for taking the risk and for sticking with it through tough times.
And how long has it been since you founded Factory?
Yeah, that 2008. So I did it in another sort of period of recession when everybody else was worried about
Yeah.
their jobs. I thought, hey, let's start a training company. That seems smart.
So you started in a recessionary period, which is
Correct?
again, you don't hear
Stupid.
a lot of
Stupid.
people.
You can say it, Amna. It's stupid.
That's one way to put it. So yeah, you don't see a lot of people doing that. They're like very cautious during that time, you know. So I mean, how was that exactly? Did you feel that you had to face a lot of challenges when you first started out, like the first year, the first 2 years?
Yeah. Do you know what? It was really more about, and it is really more about where you are as an individual than where the rest of the economy is. And I'll give you an example of that. The timing was perfect for me for a few reasons. One, I had the experience I knew that I needed to be credible in my on my own, if that makes sense.
Right.
Two, I hated my boss. That was the instigator, right? It was time to go. Three, I'd planned for this. So each of us have a different cushion for comfort.
Hmm.
I was single. I had kept my expenses very low. I'd spent most of the last 2 years traveling the globe and just stockpiling. So I had the money I needed in my savings to feel safe. I then also had one or two gigs lined up. And I think that's the right time for people. You don't want to jump when you just have an idea, right? And no savings. You want to jump when you have enough savings where you feel, okay, I can go to bed without panic every night because I have X months living expenses saved. And maybe I've done a hot side hustle for a little while, and now I've got a pretty meaty contract where I can jump into this and be okay for a month or two on just this contract while I look for the next. And that was the
Mhm.
situation for me. So the recession didn't matter, right? I built my life. So if I made under 50 grand that year, I was fine.
Right. And I mean, I liked how you mentioned the planning bit. So you planned for it. How far do you
Hmm.
think that's like the integral component when it comes to starting your own business, or how crucial is it? Like,
Everybody's
would
going
you
to do it
categorize it as
differently.
like the top three things that a person should, be thinking about?
No, actually, believe it or not. So the timing and the money, yes, that part does take planning. Otherwise, you're going to wind up sucked back in, if that makes sense. So, especially if you're doing a job on behalf of others, which of course you are in any sort of entrepreneurship, whether it's a service, a product development, et cetera. If you haven't planned to eat for the period of time that makes you comfortable, for me it was 3 months. For other people, it's a year and 3 months. If you haven't planned for that, then the first offer you get, you're going to take. And I see that happen again and again and again, right? Oh, you're doing a great job for us. Why don't you just come on full time? Well, they're asking you to do that because it's cheaper for them and it's
Mhm.
safer for them. But that's not why you started a business in the first place. So yes, that part of the planning is integral. There's another part of the planning where you've got to figure out healthcare, for instance, for you and your family. That goes into the taking care of me so that I'm not scared area. There's a third part of planning where you've got to decide, what's my secret sauce? Who's going to buy it? What am I going to do to set myself up? And boy, is that different for every different type of business, right? Do I need a full website? Do I just need a LinkedIn page? Am I actually going to find my following on Instagram? That sort of planning has to be thought about along with that ideal customer profile. Who am I? Who do I serve? And how are they going to find me? And have I built a network of people who owe me favors in those areas? I like all of that for the
Do you
planning
think,
side.
but do you think you can plan and plan, but at the end of the day, when you really come to executing it, you don't really know how the thing's going to float,
Bingo.
right?
Yes, and there's perspectives you don't have. So I will tell you, I am a risk taker by nature. Everybody has a different profile, right? Go find a free personality profile and let it tell you how risk adverse you are, because you can plan till the cows come home and put off jumping for years. And by the way, whatever you plan for is not what it really looks like. I'll give an example. I was coaching a friend of mine who is jumping out right now. And she was talking about how much money she can make based on how many hours there are in the day.
Mm-hmm.
She's going to be taking on coaching clients. And so the idea was, well, listen, I can fill 8 hours a day times 5 days a week. I'll meet with them this often. I can meet with, right? I can have 35 clients at once. Two things were wrong with this picture. One, she hadn't necessarily done the math on what she was going to charge. So she found her maximum capacity. At her hourly rate, she wasn't going to eat. So whoops, there's that planning that needs to be done. But two, uh, in corporate America, we look at our days when they come filled with 8 to 9 meetings a day. We know that that's our capacity, and we're used to being filled at maximum capacity. Her bigger challenge is going to be finding 35 clients. That could take her a whole year. And I remember doing the same thing, right? Oh, I could fit in this many classes per day. And nope,
Mm-hmm.
you're struggling to find them one at a time. There's another perspective as well. When I popped out of corporate America, I was working with senior executives to plan training and development strategies for their teams. Most of the time, I was teaching them what that was and how to do it, which meant I was in at ground zero of the strategy. And I've talked with other consultants who have gotten to that place as well. They think that's their role. They're senior, they're important, they come with a level of credibility. But the truth is, when somebody comes to you, their idea is already 80%, 90%, sometimes 120% baked. And you don't get the access you used to because, dun 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 dun, you're now a skeevy vendor. People would always take and return my calls when I was a global director for SAP. As soon as I became Lauren Bailey doing business as Lauren Bailey, I was a ghost. And you have to remember that. And that's something to plan for. So we can't, any plan that you make from corporate America to your life as an entrepreneur will be flawed with some sort of bias to business as usual or life as usual as
Right.
you know it that you're not aware of. Did that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So that's a buffer that you prepared for. And this is the
Mhm.
same advice you're giving to, like, let's say any other people who are starting out, that to have this buffer.
Absolutely. Have a buffer of cash and expenses. Have a buffer of ideas, different places that you can go, because what you think is the money idea may not actually land with others, right? So be willing to cultivate multiple income streams and multiple services. That first year is not necessarily the time to be rigid and strict and stay in your lane, right? That lane's going to develop over time. And also have a buffer of network and favors. So my last few months at SAP, any vendor that wanted to get in, man, I helped them. And guess what? Then they owed me a favor. And
Okay.
right, those people I could call on. So cultivate the network of people who might recommend you, give you advice, or hire you before you take off your corporate hat and try on the skeevy vendor.
Right. And what do you think is the most rewarding part of being a founder?
Freedom. Freedom speaks to me and my personality type. I like control. I like to be in charge of my days. I like not having an asshole boss, pardon the French. I also love that I'm going to quit work this afternoon and go up with my family to the water, and I don't have to ask anybody for those days off. I like that I can arrange my schedule so that I don't take meetings before 8:30 a.m. so I can take my kids to school.
And
I
is
like that I
this
can decide who to work with and who to fire.
and is this something that you, I mean, the people that work for you now, is this something that they also enjoy?
100%. That's honestly like what we tout. We have an open sales position right now. And at the top of the list isn't, big corporate experience and the most money you'll ever make. It's work virtually forever, not just COVID. My team's all over, and we always have been. Set your own schedule. Enjoy that flexibility and freedom. And listen, we're a small scaling company, so we all work our tushes off. But when I Slack Mike in Atlanta, and let's be honest, it's 4 p.m. for me, so right, it's evening time for him. There are times where he gets in and he answers, and then there's other times at 9 a.m. when he's like, "Hey, I'm teaching a yoga class. Can't talk right now," and that's okay. It's how we're all scheduling and living our lives, and that's part of that original dream, right? I want to pay people as much as I can afford to pay them, which, by the way, has been a bit of my mistake. I've never paid myself enough, but like I want them to have a great living, and I want them to love coming to work. And to me, that means flexibility and people that you love and getting behind a same mission and being culture aligned. Like our final interview question, the team interviews people, and the question we ask is, would I go on vacation with this person? Like, are they a fit for us? Do we like them as human beings?
That's
That
an
should probably
interesting
get me like
question.
in trouble with some legal
Yeah,
group, right?
yeah, that's something good to consider actually.
Yeah, I don't think it's illegal to ask that question, but it's important, that culture fit. I'm sorry that we're crossing over. Say what you're going to say.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking, so having a virtual workforce has actually worked well for you and your business.
Very well. Yes, very well. What's been fun about COVID, which is weird to say, and by the way, I got it and beat it, so I do know
Oh,
the not fun
okay.
parts, but what's been fun about it is that the rest of the world has come to see our points of view, right? Like I used to have to pretend my home office was a real office, right? If the dog barked because it's Amazon day, I was working the mute button like it's hot. And now everybody else is in that spot too, and it's been the great humanization of business. And I love that.
Oh, cool. So Lauren, talk us through the journey to becoming the top 25 sales coaches and women in sales.
Well, it was a bit of a surprise, I have to say. It's really a journey into thought leadership, right? I will tell you very transparently that 10 years ago, I watched people in my field that I admire greatly, Trish Bertuzzi and Steve Richard. I watched them on stages, and I wanted that. Now, being an overachiever, I was instantly mad at myself for not having already done it, right? Whoops, that's not the right way to go about it. But I knew that I wanted that level of credibility and respect, and I just wasn't there yet in my business. And I didn't admire the people who bought their way on stage and seemed to be all shine, right? There's people with 10 times the following that I have, but their work wasn't great. And I think that we did that a little backwards at Factor 8 than a lot of people. We've been a product company, a bootstrapped product company, right? So I didn't go raise funding and hire 20 salespeople and scale huge. And I didn't hire a PR firm to make sure that we became a big name. And I don't have Instagram followers. We do really damn good work for our clients. And in fact, for the first half or more, we didn't even have a sales or marketing team. We were all inbound, repeat, and referral business. And then a few years ago, we decided, you know what? Our product is really damn good and our clients love us, and let's get after this a little bit. Like, what would happen if we went about this company like we gave a damn?
Mm-hmm.
And we hired marketing and we hired sales, and I started speaking more, and we started to get recognized, and the following started to build. But I think that where it popped was where I quit trying so hard to be credible, if you will, and instead aligned with my passion. And that's when I started Girls Club. And the very tiny background on that was that I got sick of talking about why aren't there more women in sales leadership, and thought, you know what, I'm going to do something about it. And this club is dedicated towards helping women in sales earn promotions.
Okay.
So we've got this
Interesting.
certification program. We rapidly accelerate careers and promotions. Yeah. And so I was so passionate about it, and it was really more of a give back. I haven't made $1 on it, but I'll tell you what, my notoriety, if you will, really skyrocketed then. So that's when I started getting recognized more as a thought leader. And I noticed that people were asking me to speak at conferences, and I would wind up on a list that I didn't even know existed. And believe me, that is a ton of fun, because I remember little Lauren, who looked at the people on those lists and thought, they'll
I,
never ask me,
I can
right?
only imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll never ask me. And now somebody sends it to me and says, hey, did you know that you were noted in this? So you get it when you quit caring about it. It's sort of like dating, right? You find a guy when you're not looking.
Yeah. And what is one advice that you'd give to someone new in the sales field?
Study your craft. Sales is an art and a science. You were
Mm-hmm.
probably recommended to get into sales because you have a natural way to connect with people, or because somebody thinks you talk a lot. The former will help you, the latter will hurt you. There are so many ways to improve, and the best salespeople are constantly improving. We advise people to look for the 3 C's. That's curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
confidence, and coachability. And it speaks to studying your craft.
Okay. And what are the building blocks of a good sales strategy?
Man, that's a deep question, isn't it? So there's quite a few. When you think about a sales strategy, there are different components that I think are easy to get confused. So if you think about a sales process, it's sort of like the bones on the skeleton. When you think about a sales methodology, it's the meat or the cheap suit, depending on how good it is, on the bones, right? When you think about where this skeleton is facing and with whom it's interfacing, that's your customer alignment. The key then is aligning the customer goal with the sales motion or process and sales talk track or messaging or methodology, and then figuring out the key goals or gates through each of those steps, because from there we can align key performance indicators, leading and lagging, metrics, behaviors, and skills. So start with that customer sort of at the center, build
Okay.
the bones, put the meat on the bones, then break it down into steps, KPIs, metrics, behaviors, and skills.
And what are some of the common problems of sales in B2B versus sales in B2C? And how can we address them?
I will tell you, Anna, that I've been in the B2B world
Mm-hmm.
from the very beginning. I don't spend as much time in the B2C world, but I will tell you that one problem that really sticks out to me in B2C is that we're we're marketing more than selling. Okay, when somebody calls you in B2C and tries to sell you something, all they're doing is picking up a phone and pitching, right? The person trying to get you to sign up for timeshare or credit card or whatever it is, who's calling you at home, isn't having a business conversation. Their job is to call, pitch, call, pitch, call, pitch, call, pitch, call, pitch. And
Yeah.
then, it's a numbers game. 1 out of 25 will stick. In B2B, sadly, many of our less successful sellers do the exact same thing, right? It's non-consultative. I think that those two tie together, which leads to a really horrible statistic I have to share. HubSpot did a study a few years back with what percentage of people trust sellers. Do you want to guess the number?
I have no clue.
What's your gut say? 1 out of 100, pick a number.
30?
Not bad. Yes, I would hope it's 30. The answer is 3.
Oh.
3%. The good news on that is that we're still a point and a half above politicians. They get 1.5%. But sellers are way down there. And that's an issue in both B2C and B2B.
Right. Has the new normal taught us anything that will make companies reevaluate how they approach their customers?
Hell yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I've heard so many wonderful things about this. And I'm excited to hear my excitement because I've always been a virtual, digital, inside
Yeah, I
seller,
just picked up
right?
on that in the early home session.
Yeah. Listen, I did face-to-face selling when I was young in my career, but I've been helping build out the virtual teams. And it's been an exciting journey. And let me tell a very short story about that. So 20 years ago, I stood in front of a class of IBMers, convincing them you could sell a computer over the phone. And it was crazy talk to them at the time, right? It was crazy talk. Flash forward 10 years, I was standing in front of a team of sellers for SAP, convincing them you could sell software over the phone. And they thought I was nuts. I mean, in Singapore, they sent me home. They were like, no, it's just never going to happen. Hello, right? And I've watched industry after industry ride the wave. And right, so then 5 years ago, I was standing in front of a group at big box retail. Yep, folks, you can buy paper and pencils over the phone. Today, I'm talking with people in healthcare. Yep, you can reach your doctors, right? And recommend your drugs, your prescriptions, your whatever it may be over the phone. I don't think there's anything that can't be sold over the phone. Now, it doesn't mean it doesn't have to have some face-to-face at some point, whether it be installation or whatever. It really follows the product life cycle. If you can picture that in your head, right? Before you cross the chasm, if you will, when you're selling an idea and something that's brand new where you have to educate the public, that's when people go face-to-face. But guess what? We can't today. So we're figuring out even how to do those. Once you're getting up towards project maturity or product maturity, you're nuts not to have a virtual sales force. And cost is a big part of that, right? We have to pull the cost out of it if you're commoditized. But the other big part of that is what your customers are demanding, right? Amazon is Amazon for a reason. People want that speed and convenience. Why would that not translate to the business sales?
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. And
It does, right? And it's fun to watch these industries have to embrace it. And I'll share a little story. When traditional field industries are finding my company Factor 8 right now, they're finding us because we teach virtual sales skills, and their super tenured sellers are stuck, right? Because they can't go in to an office anymore. And they spend the first 2/3 of our partnership explaining to us, we're not virtual sales. We're better than virtual sales. We don't really need you. When you talk to our people, would you be careful not to mention inside sales? Listen, I know you've won a bunch of awards, but they're all for virtual selling. Could you not mention that, right? Because it's an insult to the tenured seller. But guess what? The game just changed, right? They need the skills of their 23-year-old sons and daughters now. And I love being part of that. I love watching people go through change and ultimately embrace it and flourish. And the ones who don't pivot, that's sort of Darwinism, if you will.
Makes sense. And speaking of change, there also has been a recent surge in e-commerce activity despite the pandemic situation. How can companies and especially the sales team like really cash in on this?
You have to ask yourself, how can you be more convenient? How do your customers want to buy? How can you make it easier from them? How can you address where they are, which is home? How can you be more accessible and available? Is there something that you can repackage and sell because now it's a home buyer? Is it something that you can rebrand, right? I have the exact same offering, but instead of targeting virtual sellers, I'm targeting field sellers.
Right.
I didn't have a new product, I rebranded it. Here's an example of repackaging. We normally partner with companies for 12 months. They sort of outsource all their sales engagement with us. That means it's a not event-based, it's true partnership to change and improve behaviors over time. Well, that was different in this time because nobody's got that budget and people aren't looking a year ahead. So I found ways to repackage, not just by offering pause clauses and financing, but by repackaging sort of intros and starters. I put together a 6-week boot camp at a super low price point, right? My same product, but I've repackaged, I've rebranded, I've retargeted to a different market,
Right.
and I've taken into account the new buying cycle, which is super executive CFO heavy, and avoided their common stoppers, their common objections right up front with some of the financing options.
Right. And lastly, Lauren, what do you think the sales industry will look like in the next 5 years?
I think it's going to look more like today than it did look like yesterday. So there are many folks who have shared with me they didn't renew their corporate lease. They're not going back to the office, or they're going to downsize the offices and make them accessible for the workers who want them. Right? Your kids are home on fall break, come on into the office. It's going to be a WeWork space, not a huge corporate office. I think that's for sure. I think in the sales tech space, there's a trend that we've already started, which is the joining together of tools, right? The sales tool tech stack exploded 5 years ago. Which frankly pissed me off in the training services budget, because it's so much easier and sexier for a sales leader to buy a tool than to buy their team some training. So now they're young people who don't have any training now also have 12 tools on average that they've got to navigate. Well, I think the new trend in that is the pendulum shifting back, and we're combining tools. So the ones who will win in the future are, the 2, 3, 4, 5 tools combined to lower the number in the tech stack, because I think everybody's realized that we've gone a little cray-cray. And then on the human side, it might be wishful thinking, Amna, but I think that it really is this is our decade as sellers. I feel like that HubSpot 3% is us. It's a sign that we've bottomed out. In the last 5 years, we've watched technology take off. We've also watched the customer journey completely change thanks to e-commerce. We've watched our marketing friends adapt better than we have. The marketing tools, the MarTech, that what marketing can tell you about what the customer has been doing before they get to us, all of that is light years ahead of any of the transformations we've made as sellers. We're still doing the billboarding like I talked about before, right? Call, pitch, call, pitch, call, pitch. We're still selling to customers the same old way. We're not gaining trust. We're not being trusted advisors. And the industry is working against us because there's an employment shortage. You used to be able to buy, quote unquote, a sales rep with 5 years of experience, a college degree, played a competitive sport, and worked in your industry. And now you're lucky to get somebody with 5 minutes of experience and like regular breathing. So we have to start developing these people, right? We're taking them without college degrees. We're taking them without any experience, and yet we're not developing them any differently than we used to, which tells us no wonder the customer's pissed off. Right? Nobody's enjoying that experience. So I think this is our time to get a hold of that and our time to shine. We threw the fast and easy stuff at it with tech, and we've customized the roles and segmented the roles, and we've propped it up with great process and scripts and technology and marketing alignment, but we haven't addressed the voice-to-voice contact between our customers and our sellers, and that's the next frontier.
Thank you, Lauren, for your insights around businesses and sales. I loved hosting you on Better Tech Startup Series segment.
It was my pleasure, Anna. Thank you so much for asking, and I hope that your listeners have found a couple nuggets of valuable advice.